Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Bits episode, a super sad Bits episode because all of us here in this room have spent thousands of miles driving F-150 Lightnings, and I'm actually the only one here who is not an F-150 Lightning owner. I feel totally left out of the room. I do own a Ford truck, but not a Lightning. Sad day because the Lightning is canceled. Well, Ford will tell you they're going to come out with an extended range electric vehicle pickup truck that I'm looking forward to hearing more about. We have the official Ford communications, but also just everyone's opinions on what's happening with the Lightning and how it got to this point. So I'm actually going to toss it over to my buddy Tom from State of Charge. He already has a full YouTube video out on his channel discussing his ownership experience with his truck and a little bit of the news. So Tom, tell us what you heard from Ford today and what the situation is.
Well, in my opinion, basically, Kyle, I think it's a matter of the fact that the Lightning didn't sell in near the numbers that they had hoped, and it was losing money. They had built this infrastructure around it selling more than 100,000 units per year. We are 3.5 years into Lightning sales now, and we're at 99,000 units. So, there's more than 1,000 of them out there in inventory. So it will end with selling right around 1,000 trucks in 3.5 years. So, companies can't withstand that sort of a disruption in their production planning. It's with the Lightning, it was different than if, let's say, the Ford Edge didn't sell as well, because all of the components, well, not all the components, but the whole powertrain was all bespoke. They had contracts with suppliers. They were building battery plants to be able to churn out these 140 plus kilowatt hour battery packs. And the fact that it sold so much slower than what they were predicting really, really hurt the company. And I think that it was just a matter of they needed to stop the bleeding, and losing the federal tax credit was the final nail in the Lightning's coffin. And that made it just completely unaffordable. Remember, this was a truck that was promised to us at $39,900. When years ago, before the Lightning came out, and that generated a tremendous amount of excitement. Then when the Lightning launched, in the first 6 months, I think they had 4 or 5 price increases. It was nuts. Every other week, it's 2,000 more, it's 1,000 more. And that really, it became not affordable. And I think most people aren't able to do the math and do total cost of ownership. Like bean counters in businesses do, and they look at that and say, well, they pull up to a Ford lot and there's a comparable vehicle right next to it, a combustion F-150, that's $12,000 or $13,000 less, and even if they still say, well, I kind of wanted the electric one, let's go do the numbers, the salesman plugs those numbers in, and it's like $150 more a month. It's just not affordable. And that salesperson can't communicate the value of driving electric. Can't say, okay, let's look at your TCO. Let's look at 3 years in with gas prices, with not needing oil changes and all this stuff. I mean, that's what I focused on when I did dealership training, when I helped dealers sell electric cars. I would make sure the salesperson's first focus was total cost of ownership, and was able to quickly communicate that to the customer. Not force them into it. Buy the vehicle that you want, but at least you really should know what it's going to cost over 3 years. And if you just go off MSRP, no one's going to buy any Lightnings. And one of the things I don't think a lot of people are going to talk about, I think like the first nail in the Lightning's coffin, maybe even bigger than losing the federal tax credit, was Ford getting pummeled by the dealership lobby and having to pull back and end Model E, because that was going to really help them with their electric vehicles. And they just were under such fire from every angle. And I'm a little surprised about that, because Ford invited me out to Las Vegas when they told their dealers this was happening. And I'm thinking to myself, they're nuts. There's no way they're going to be able to pull this off. They're going to get sued in every single state. NADA is going to be on them. But then I said, well, it's Ford, so they must know what they're doing. Like they've thought this through. Their lawyers have a legal way to do it, and they'll be able to, overcome this. But I was wrong. I gave them too much credit. They they got their asses handed to them, and they had a pullback. And I think that was the first nail in the Lightning's coffin. And now losing the federal tax credit. And listen, guys, we know the political landscape here has changed dramatically, and the administration wants to tell businesses what they should be doing. We've never seen this before, and I don't want to get political here, but I know for a fact this current administration is putting big pressure on the domestic automakers to walk the line that they want them to walk. And that had something to do with this also. So there's a lot of people here. Let's get everybody's comments on this. But I love my Lightning, and one of the best electric vehicles I've ever had.
So we'll get into that in a second, Tom. We're going to run through everyone's experiences. My buddy Alex and my colleague who runs the Out of Spec Renew channel just joined us in an F-150 Lightning to talk towards the end of the show about repairability and what's it going to be like if you plan to keep a Lightning long-term in the future, because he just tore this high mileage one open and actually upgraded the battery pack in it. So that's a really cool extra story. But Tom, I want to talk to you about what Ford is saying the future will be, because I had a call with them. I know you spoke to them as well. And they were like, look, it's not all bad. It's not all bad. But like, I'm on the phone with the press guy there who loves Lightning. I love Lightning. And we're like almost in tears over this thing. Obviously, it's a sad day. But what they're going to do is there's going to be a next generation Lightning, which is going to be an extended range electric vehicle to be built in Dearborn. I don't know if it's going to be built in the factory that the F-150 Lightning was done in. It is?
It's at the Rouge. Yeah.
At the Rouge. So I have a full video tour of the Rouge electric vehicle plant. Actually, TJ was there with me, and so was Scott. We had a really good time. It was a cool facility. That's already live on YouTube. So the EREV, for those who are watching and don't know, it's primarily an electric vehicle. It's basically a series hybrid. It's powered by electric motors and a main battery pack, but is completely charged either from a wall socket or a DC fast charger potentially, but charged from a combustion engine. So you get an EV-like driving experience, but also the benefit in this case of much more extended range and hopefully extended towing range. So it's not all bad news. It's sad for those of us who like to drive full battery electric, though. Ford is going into battery energy storage systems. They've got to do something with all of the battery plants that they have out there. They can't just let them sit idle. And so they're saying that they're going to produce 5 megawatt hour storage containers, energy storage containers for bidirectional grid scale energy management, which I'm going to certainly be interested in covering. But man, that's such a shift for Ford, and kind of cool if they just had done that anyway. But clearly you can tell they're just trying to fill the capacity of what they had in their factories. And, 50% of their global volume going forwards will be electrified by 2030. That's a huge walk back, I believe, from previous quotes. This is not saying they are electric or plug-in hybrid. This is just electrified. Today it's 17%. Tom, that's a direct quote from Ford.
Yeah, no, they're saying it's better than they're saying it was 17% was their goal by 2030, and now it's 50%. So they're saying now we're going to have even more electrified models, So
I thought they were saying today 17% of vehicles are either mild hybrid, regular hybrid, plug-in, etc.
17 is today. 17 is today.
And then, it's well, they said that they were going to increase their on the call. They said that we're increasing to 50%. That's our forecast. So whatever they were planning at the end of this decade was less than 50%.
Okay, understood. So maybe it's not walking back. Yeah. Either way, you can just tell this thing happened quick. And to be totally fair, they told everyone today. We got a comment on one of the posts that their on the line production workers knew an hour before the public knew. Tom, you knew 2 hours before the public knew. And the factory shut down. It's not like they're producing cars today. It's done already.
Yeah, they went on pause earlier this month when they had the fire in the aluminum factory, and I wonder if the decision was actually made at that point. But to your point about the EREV, it kind of feels to me like that's something they just added, like let's calm the natives, and okay, we're not giving up on the electric trucks. We're going to make an EREV, because there's zero information on this thing. And I asked, just give me something. I was like, we have nothing. So it's just kind of like one of those things that I don't really get the feeling that that's even real. I kind of get the feeling that, like, that was just to make us all feel good. Like, we're not abandoning electric trucks, guys. We're making what people want, and that's EREVs. What do you guys think?
I will say in the earnings calls, previous earnings calls, they have talked about this. It's something I've mentioned a few times, is that this was a pivot they were going to make, and this was a big thing that Jim Farley called out in the past. Was he had a whole quote about that the big heavy vehicles, that they just couldn't do it on pure battery electric at the cost, and that EREV was the way. And then when he had gone to China, that was one of the things that he has observed. And so EREV is a thing that they had talked about, and they had talked about making Tennessee a multi powertrain where it would have like super duties. They were talking about EREV for super duties, and then BEV for the smaller. So it and the whole idea of the software in the future was kind of based on that idea when they talked about having everything be battery electric motors, and your user experience would all be kind of tied to that idea of that battery experience. And maybe that power would then be regenerated through, that generator back into the battery, but your powertrain was still going to be electric, and you would have that, whether that was full BEV or EREV. That's been talked about for probably a year's worth of quarterly calls.
But you would think we'd get something on it now, like by the end of this year or sometime in 20, like they can give no information on the EREV whatsoever.
Yeah, it's going to be after, probably 28 and beyond. It's going to be after the universal for sure. T3's done. They delayed T3 to 28. That was they said the van and T3 were delayed till 28 originally. Now they've canceled the van altogether and T3 altogether. So you can kind of imagine this would then take its place, likely out into 28 and beyond.
So what I'd like to do is, I think it's worth doing a podcast dedicated to the future of Ford's electrification plans, because to me, it feels like they were the most hardcore developing a community. Chris, you were part of that. A lot of the people here were a part of the early community of Ford. And, clearly you could feel them backing away from that over the last 1 year or so, but especially the last few months. And now the truck's gone. Who knows what's going to happen to Mach-E? It just feels like they're pulling back massively. Tom, I know you've got to leave soon. I'd love to just run through how everyone has enjoyed their trucks and what we've done with them. That's why everyone's here, just to share, ownership experiences and stories. So, Tom, I know you've got to head out. How's your truck been?
So listen, I've actually never produced, I shot, but I never put it together like my 3-year ownership experience video. And now I'm going to have to change it, but I'll put something out soon. So I've got it at the end of June of 2022. I have a little over 40,000 miles on it. It's not a lot for 3+ years, but I have 4 electric vehicles that I kind of share driving. If that was my only car, I'd have like close to 100,000 miles on it now. But I absolutely love the Lightning. I've said this many times on the Batteries Included podcast on my channel. I've owned 12 different electric cars now. I've driven over 500,000 miles in my electric vehicle since 2010. I've been driving electric cars full time, and it's either my second favorite or my favorite electric vehicle. I absolutely love it. The driving experience is fantastic. I'm still to this day shocked at how good Ford did with this vehicle, considering it's not a bespoke, platform. How well they put it together, how quiet it is. Even driving long distances, my wife always says, "Let's take the Lightning over our Rivian R1S and over the Equinox." But that's probably not too big of a stretch. But we've owned other really nice electric vehicles, and going low, her daily drivers are R1S. But when we drive 200+ miles up to Vermont and so forth, she always wants to take the Lightning. It's so soft and it's quieter than the Rivian. The driving experience is even better. Not as sporty. It's not as capable as a Rivian off-road, but everything about the Lightning I really loved. Software could be better. There's no arguing that. But I wasn't going into it. I wasn't expecting it to be Tesla level software. I knew what I was getting. I knew it was Ford trying to do a little bit better on software than what they did on their previous generation. So I didn't have high expectations. The charging in Kyle, we talked about this. It's acceptable. They've improved it since I've gotten it now. That 10 to 80% that used to be 48 minutes is now 39 minutes, 38, 39 minutes. So they shaved a good amount of time off of that. We've got a flatter curve. It charges a little bit higher. Is it a great charging EV? No, it's not, but it's acceptable for long trips. Just overall, I'm super happy with it. Not a single problem. 3.5 years in, 40,000+ miles. Had a couple recalls that, with the light bar in the back and so forth. But other than that, it's been great. So it's sad to see it going. I think a lot of people missed out. To be honest with you, I think a lot of truck owners would have really been able to transition to an electric vehicle without an issue, but they were afraid to. The cost, they weren't able to be communicated properly at the dealership. There's a litany of things that conspired to the Lightning ending.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate all the insight as always, and enjoy the party tonight. Have an extra beer for the Lightning.
Yeah, I'm going to head out, guys. Listen, sorry I didn't get to listen to all you guys, but I got a birthday party to attend to. I'll have an extra drink or two to drown my Lightning sorrows. So
one for the homies.
Take care, guys.
That's right. So Matt, you're sitting in your F-150 Lightning. You've joined us on road trips in the past and things. The viewers probably know you, especially if you're an F-150 Lightning owner. Yeah. Dude, you have worked that truck hard. You've towed with it everywhere. You did the thing everyone said is not possible. How's it been?
It's been excellent. I've done everything from a 500-mile towing in a day with a 35-foot camper to just regular everyday stuff. I've calculated it up, and I think it was the beginning of the year that somewhere around 20% of my miles have been with a trailer attached. And I'm looking here right now, I'm at 52,300 miles in 2 years. So this truck has been excellent. It's been the best EV I've owned, thanks to, in part, you, but also a lot of the community. I've been able to spend a lot of time in a lot of EVs. It's still the one that feels like home. It's the one that I always come back to for the everyday driving experience and the value associated to it. It has been the everything EV for us. I've had almost no problems with it. One little nagging thing with a parking sensor that I've had to deal with, but other than that, my truck has only had one recall, and it's a 23. So it's been absolutely excellent for us.
Yeah, thanks for that input. I mean, I definitely want to talk later on the show just a little bit about maybe some of the misconceptions about the Lightning, especially from YouTube shows and even us, to the point we push electric cars super hard and they don't always look good in the test, but it's interesting to benchmark them in that test. I think people really do forget that, like, hey, you can kind of charge at home, and most people never do see a DC fast charger out there unless you're going on a long trip. And if you are, you're with your kids or your family, and maybe having the fastest charging car and the longest distance car isn't needed. I think we would all agree, though, for towing, we would appreciate a bigger battery pack. Yeah. No one would argue that. But, I do want to talk to Ben. So Ben has an F-150 Lightning that literally goes up into the middle of nowhere, Colorado. You're on the western slope, harsh conditions. And that's, again, so people always say, hey, Lightnings don't work in the cold, or electric cars don't. Tell us your experience, please.
Yeah, so mine's a 2023 XLT standard range, and I kind of like to think that I'm the guy who can talk about owning the base model of any. Like, my first car was a standard range Model 3, my first EV car, I should say. And then with this Lightning, I originally had a reservation for a rear motor Cybertruck because at reveal it was like the same thing with the Lightning. It was like a $39,000 price tag that Elon put out with the Cybertruck, and that went blowing through the roof. And as a public school teacher, I can't afford 100% increase in an MSRP cost on a truck that has way less features than was put out there, and oh, by the way, might not even get. And so I started asking around about the Lightnings, and as you know, Kyle, Colorado has so many incentives for people to get EV vehicles. So I was able to stack a vehicle exchange program, which is like a cash for clunkers program here in Colorado. I had my Model 3 that I was able to trade in, and then all the other income eligible Colorado stuff. So I found my Lightning at a Loveland Ford dealership, and out of my own pocket, it was $12,000. And so I just wrote a check to the dealer for $12,000, and I drove off the lot with a fully paid off Lightning. Like, that was like a perfect scenario for me, and there was no way that was going to happen with any other EV truck. But as you mentioned, I live off grid. I live 3,000 feet elevation higher than where I teach, so I have a pretty insane commute. And then because I live off grid, I use Pro Power to be the main backup source of my house. So I was able to get a 98 kilowatt hour battery pack for $12,000, and the home pack for my house was almost $10,000, and it was only 15 kilowatt hours. So the truck has a lot of like capability just as a backup generator for my house. But with the dual motors, I'm essentially in 4-wheel drive all the time. With the frunk, we can do big family road trips. All of our luggage can be in the frunk, and I still have the bed for other bigger items. Like, we road trip to San Diego. We've been to Branson, Missouri. We're at a DC fast charger, and I can use the outlets in the bed of the truck to cook up burgers with an electric griddle instead of like going out to eat. So we can, go out to the beach and cook out there. But my ownership has been pretty smooth for the most part. I had a few issues with some rodent damage, but Ford was able to take care of that. But I think one of the things that I noticed was a concern for some people is after I bought my Lightning is when Ford announced that the dealerships weren't quite communicating with each other, and that you had to service your Lightning at the dealer you purchased from. And so my dealer, I purchased from Loveland, but I'm on the west slope of Colorado over a couple mountain passes, where Rifle, Colorado is my closest dealer, but they couldn't work on it because I didn't purchase from them. And so all of a sudden there's all this confusion of like, well, if my car needs work, do I really have to go all the way to Loveland to get it worked on? I tried to have Glenwood Springs Ford take a look at it, and they refused to look at it because I didn't buy it from them, and they didn't want to touch it because of the issues that the dealerships were having in the communication with Ford. And so I think between that and then just general EV misconceptions, there was not a lot of adoption in the early years. But now, I mean, my town only has 4,000 people, and I know of 10 Lightning owners just in my town now. And so suddenly people are buying them. There's EV Silverados everywhere too. So there's a lot of ownership that's been increasing this last year as Ford is decreasing their level of support for it. So that's going to be an interesting kind of future. Like, I own my truck outright, so I'm not necessarily worried about resale value. But I mean, people who might have just bought this truck a month ago, I'm wondering what they're thinking about as they're looking at their lease payments or their monthly, payments, and what's going to happen there.
Well, that's why Alex is on. So at the end, Alex is going to tell us a little bit about at least his experience with this super beat high mileage standard range. That'll be interesting to hear. Speaking of living off grid, going on dirt and snowy roads all the time, I've got to bring TJ in because he lives in nice sunny Florida. So, but you are working on an overlanding build for your Lightning. So Tom, tell us like what it's been like to own your truck, modify it a little bit. And, you're obviously an advocate for the Lightning owner community as well. What's it feel like to hear that the truck's canceled?
Yeah, very sad. Especially, and I just bought this in May this year. I've been trying to buy Lightning since 22. Back when the prices were skyrocketing, I was trying to get a pros were $80K. That was a struggle. But now I finally have one. I have a 25 Flash that is masquerading as a King Ranch. And the compatibility for parts, like the aftermarket, is very nice because it's just F-150 parts, bed accessories, wheels, running boards, you name it. It's all just F-150 parts. And usually, EV parts are more expensive because it's for an EV. Rivian parts are very expensive in the aftermarket from my R1S. But yeah, I love this truck. I work out of it almost daily. I've mounted a Starlink to the roof. That's what I'm calling from, powered by Pro Power. And it's been great. I have a leveling kit. I'm going to get soon. I've leveled out the front, get rid of the rake. And I mean, one of the things I'll definitely kind of focus on is when I go camping. I use this to power my camper all the time. And my favorite part about it is no gas. And with the, EREV, it's great, but it's still, gas is still in the picture. I love that I can just go completely off grid. And by my calculations, about 2 weeks fully off grid, just powered by Pro Power from my camper. That's hard use. AC, microwave, heater, cranked, always going. Probably can stretch it 3 weeks. I'm a bit more conservative. But yeah, it's a fantastic truck. I love it. I also agree sync could be better, as a lot of people agree about. But yeah, pretty sad day. I'm hoping I am one of those people that just got one, so it is a bit concerning on that front. I'm pretty sure they'll be fine. Repairability, warranty. I have no doubt Ford will take care of that for people who are still owning one or have just bought one. And I believe it's still technically on sale for the rest of for like 26, I think. Since like the SCX just came out.
Yeah, that I was going to bring that up really quick. So they everything that's produced is it, and there's no more. So it's till inventory runs out. So the STX is going to be a super rare trim. In the Lightning, which
I love that thing.
Looks good.
My understanding is we'll never see an STX.
You don't think they even built them?
No, we saw an engineer build, which wasn't even production. It was just, kind of one that was cosmetically put together.
No, I don't know if they built any of them.
Yeah, and the
It
factory
was supposed to be a 26, and they're
Right.
only making 25. So yeah.
Yep.
So actually, okay. Well, thanks, Tom. Appreciate the update. Alan, you're new to the channel. We've chatted before offline before. Welcome, and would love to. I don't actually know your Lightning story, so I'd love to hear it and how it's been.
Yeah, so I bought a Pro Lightning back in 23, and I used that pretty hard for about a year, doing work stuff, projects, hauling material for a couple of businesses that I have. And then I got the opportunity to upgrade that to a Flash for not a ton more and good financing deals and all that. So I upgraded to the long range Flash. And then I got a tow behind camper for it, 32-foot camper, 8,000 pounds. And I've traveled all over this year with it. We went kind of did a little East Coast trip up to, I live in Ohio. We went up to Bar Harbor, Maine, down to New York City and back and such. So I got at least 4,000 towing miles between the camper and some other trailers this year, which was a lot of fun. Some good experiences. It tows like a dream. Going up mountains in the East Coast, passing other trucks towing campers just struggling, and you're just flying past them was quite the experience. But obviously, like you said, range, definitely considered kind of maybe going to a bigger battery, but the options for that right now are limited and have their own downfalls. But overall, we absolutely love the Lightning. It's a comfortable ride. It's really kind of a Swiss Army knife, I think, of comfort and usability, whether it be for the family, for towing, for hauling. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for that. It's really cool to hear that you're using it so hardcore. And actually, I wanted to paint a little bit different picture of the Lightning here with Chris, because Chris owned an earlier Lightning that honestly was a lemon. It got bought back, but still loves the truck. This is the theme that we keep coming back to, which is regardless of problems or use case, it just seems like for so many, the truck worked so well. And I'm struggling to find out how the market, I think Ford did a really good job marketing this truck in general to the EV community. I'm not sure about wide communication about the vehicle, but Chris, tell us about your first truck's problem, how Ford handled it, and what you're driving now.
Yeah, so I started off with the standard range Lightning, and then completely fell in love with it. I mean, it became our family road tripper. A lot like Tom talked about, it is the preferred go-to vehicle, and we took it down to San Diego. We took it all the way to the Grand Canyon as a family. I've taken it to Vegas. It is an amazing ride, and that's in a standard range. So anybody that thinks you can't road trip an EV, I've definitely done it. It became, I was one of the people that took the very first deliveries out here on the West Coast, right off the train. I was tracking it all the way, trying to activate it from my phone as it was on the train. And it became, it was featured at the county fair out here, got a lot of attention, founded the Ford Lightning Club out here in the Bay Area, and just became a part of the EV community. And I'm really grateful for it in so many ways. There's so many people here. I've personally, gotten to meet you and been to Ben's house, and I gotten to meet Matt. And it's just a whole world that I would have had no idea about. And just met Tom just this last week, personally. Being able to pick him up was just a treat. And so everybody that I've met in the community is because of that first Ford Lightning that I picked up and how much fun it was. And everybody I show it to lights up. It is probably second only to the VW Buzz in terms of people who enjoy being around it. And every EV show that I come to in the Bay Area, ride and drive event, people want to get inside of it. They want to see it. I put inflatables on it. I have a frunk that I light up an entire sound system in, and wherever it goes, that's where the party is. And now it did have some electrical gremlins, let's call it, for sure. Constant problems with the 12 volt. Ford did their best to try to fix it. They replaced the wire harness, 12 volt wire harness on it twice. They've had numerous repairs. I also had a high voltage battery module fail, so they replaced that. And they gave me an extended warranty on it to, try to give me faith in the vehicle. And they went out of their way to really do everything they could to make it right. But on a road trip down to Southern California, it failed again and ended up on a tow. And so at that point, I was down at ACT Expo, actually, and you were down there as well. And they thought they had it repaired one more time. And literally on the last day of ACT Expo, my phone goes off and starts exploding with all the different alerts that we get on our app. And I called the dealer and I say, hey, man, can you go and try to test drive the vehicle? And it was all the gremlins came back again. And at that point, they say, hey, we're going to go ahead and buy it back. And they did all the right things. They didn't ding me for any miles. They gave me everything back, tax, all the, stuff that I did with tinting the windows. 100% of everything. So sometimes when they do a buyback, they'll take the mileage differential. None of it. They just 100% gave me everything back. And then I love the Lightning. So I went and bought a new one. I found one out in Tennessee for an incredible deal, almost the same price as I bought my original, but this one's a platinum. And I drove it back all the way from Tennessee to California. And that's where I got to stop by and see Ben, see you, see Franklin's charging that I know you've done an entire episode on. And so, yeah, I mean, I love the Lightning. I've never had a better truck, and I've had a Ranger. I've had a gas F-150. I've got a fleet operation with vehicles, and it's entirely different with the independent rear suspension. It's so planted with the way the vehicle has the weight. And what it comes down to is price, like anything, right? For the everyday person, for someone that works for, just a normal 9-to-5 job like I do in transportation. My wife is a school teacher. Ben's a school teacher. For those types of folks, it's price. And that's the promise was never delivered on that. It's the same thing with the Cybertruck, which was my first reservation. That's why it's not moving. It's price. And I think that's really what it comes down, because it's not the truck. The truck's amazing.
Yeah, I would agree. So your thinking is price. I also think maybe potentially some capability out there, just in terms of perceived notion of what electric cars are. Alex, can you talk to us a little bit about the repair that you just went through on this, and maybe either just share, because Lightning. So here's the thing: Lightning is no longer sold. That does not mean it's no longer supported by Ford. All the vehicles that are still in warranty will get serviced. Whether or not you have to argue with the dealer to get it in or not, that's on a per dealer basis that Ben has some experience with. But just on the physical repair side, Alex, now that the trucks are gone, they still sold 100,000 of these things. There's parts in circulation. You recently were able to find a second used pack. Tell us what that was like and if owners should be concerned. Alex is working on technology.
There we go. Can you hear me now? All right.
Yeah.
So this is a kind of a higher mileage truck that came in for repairs. It actually belongs to an electrical contractor. They use it as a work truck. One of their employee drives it over 140 miles a day. This particular one has, I think, 143,000 miles on it. And I literally, just before hopping on here, I just powered it up for the first time with the new pack in it. So this is a standard range XLT, and I just put an extended range pack into it. And based on what I've seen so far, it seems to be just plug and play. There's not even any programming required. It's literally bolted in, plug it in, and it just works.
Whoa, that's pretty impressive. So just on the battery pack alone, what's the rough cost to the customer to do that? Obviously, it's not a brand new extended range battery, right?
Right, yeah. So this is a used pack. It's also from a 22, and it's pretty, it's very low mileage. It only has about 13,000 miles on it. And total installed cost comes out to about $8,500 on it. There's not a whole lot of demand for Lightning packs at this point, so it's oh, I've got a package here. You can just set it down.
You're 8750?
Yes.
Okay. What's your first name?
Alex.
Oh, cool. Sweet.
All right. Thanks.
Seeing how the magic happens right
Yeah, it's
now.
another
live.
F-150 Lightning battery showing up.
That is awesome.
So yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of demand for secondhand packs because most of the trucks are under warranty. So I'm sure as time goes by and some of them start to see higher mileage, if there's more of a demand, maybe pricing will go up for them, or maybe it'll stay pretty stable where it's at. But the packs are actually pretty inexpensive at this point.
So, Alex, what would you say are the common failure modes for F-150 Lightnings at the moment? It seems like maybe the modules.
Yeah, it seems like I've seen a few instances of failed modules on these.
Someone's
so
backing up. Hold on, what's
yeah,
happening here?
It's the delivery driver backing up. Actually, it's a transit electric. How about that?
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even mention that. Is the transit electric continuing?
Yeah. Does anybody know?
I have no idea.
The E-Transit is still being made.
Okay.
And the Mach-E. The Mach-E and the E-Transit are still being made.
Got it.
Well, that brought up a good point. So, Alex, okay, so what are the failure points?
So it seems like cell failures are certainly not unheard of. I don't know what the actual failure mode is with them, but based on what I saw with this one, the customer first brought it to me maybe about 3.5 weeks ago. And at that time, it would only charge to about 85%. And it went downhill pretty fast. By the time it showed up at my shop on Thursday last week, it was to a point where it only charged to like 45 or 50%. So I'm pretty sure that the failure was probably a week short within one of the cells, and that was just causing a parasitic drain with all the rest of the cells in that parallel group. So the standard range pack is a 90S 4P pack, so it's got 4 cells in parallel for each cell group. And I'm sure that one of them probably just had a week short failure that is just causing it to self-discharge. So there's certainly reports of that happening in Lightnings. I don't know really if it's necessarily super widespread, but it's a known issue that can happen with them.
You know, one thing I've heard throughout the community, and maybe Matt can speak to this a little bit too, is just recently the state of health reports from Lightning owners showing extremely high numbers considering the use on the vehicle. And to be totally transparent, each automaker considers state of health to be something totally different. Some view that just as capacity, some view that as total system health. But Alex, clearly in this case, what I saw on your Autel scan tool, it showed 99% state of health, but you had a dead module in there.
Right, yeah. And I don't know how accurate the Autel measurement for the state of health is on that. But I'm assuming that that's based on, I don't know how often it updates that number, but I'm going to guess that a lot of the state of health holding up so well on these is that they have a pretty big buffer built into the battery. So on the standard range pack like this one had, it's 98 kilowatt hours usable, but the full net capacity is almost 100 and is it over or under? It's somewhere around 105 kilowatt hours. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there's a pretty significant buffer in there. And I suspect that the state of health number probably eats into that buffer until it, kind of hits the limit and the degradation continues past that. So
would
I
agree.
have a feeling that the really low degradation numbers is because it's degrading in that buffer zone, and they keep the usable capacity the same while the battery degrades until it gets to a certain point.
Matt, what's your truck showing? Because I know you were talking about this recently.
Yeah, so I just ran it through. My truck was showing 98.5 percent. So that's 52,000 miles, 2.5 years of calendar age. Texas heat, but Ford thermals are good. I've never seen my battery temperature get over 107 degrees, even when towing in 110 plus degrees. So temperatures never seems to be a big concern on these things. It hurts them. So we know that it's calendar age, temperature are the two biggest things that hurt batteries, right? With that big buffer, I'm under the understanding that the state of health includes that buffer measurement, but includes that degradation into the buffer. So do we really know? No, I don't know directly from Ford engineers telling me what is what. But we do know from a lot of the users that everybody's reporting really high state of health numbers. When I'm pulling my OBD2 information, when I charge it up to 100%, if I trickle charge it off of a very low percentage all the way up to 100%, I'm still registering 131 kilowatts of usable energy. So that's what matters to me. And I think that the initial buffer on these things was like 7.5%. So usable or total capacity on these things was 143 kilowatts when they were new.
Yeah.
But of
It's
course,
107 and 143.
Yeah, that data doesn't spit out via the OBD2 to me. So all I can see is what my usable is versus what actual state of charge is versus displayed state of charge. And there's always a variance.
Right. It would be worth digging into this a little bit. And really the only way to calculate usable capacity or capacity fade that I've always found is to run a fresh vehicle from 100 to 0 and log the capacity. And then ideally, as that vehicle ages, run the same exact test in very similar conditions. And that because we're always just relying on BMS to give us health data and shop.aspects.studios.com or whatever it is. Don't trust the BMS. So that's not to say they don't have incredible capacity retention, because they seem to. And I have not heard of any F-150 Lightning owners personally that have said, hey, you know what? My truck feels like it's down on range, which I hear and experience often with many other electric vehicles. So while I was one of the ones giving them crap and still will for poor charging performance, not pushing the thermals, not making this thing a real hardcore EV experience, I think one of the potential benefits could be really long life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because one of the knocks on it, right, is that slow charging, which I agree. I would love it if this truck charged a lot faster than it does. But even so, even with that updated charge curve that some of our trucks have, my truck still is on the old curve, like Tom was talking about, where I'm 45 minutes to 80%. Even so, those new charge curves, I think they're still only running 1.5C, if that.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some benefits to that from a longevity standpoint.
Yeah, it's very possible. Very possible. So, I think as long as you keep the 12 volts fresh, parts are easily serviceable. I mean, Ford has a lot of open service repair manuals, Alex, right? So like the info is going to be known on this thing, and it should not be a worry or concern to own one way past the warranty period. What's your impression, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty vast support in terms of repairability stuff for Ford products. There's actually a really popular aftermarket diagnostic program that's actually free. Anybody that has a Ford can use it. It's called 4Scan, and it's literally designed just for doing for diagnostics and stuff on Ford vehicles. You can do coding if you want to swap components and stuff. You can change the configuration of the vehicle. So that's kind of a really cool resource out there. And I know that it does work on the Lightnings, and I believe the Mach-E as well. So that's kind of a nice resource to have. And then from a serviceability standpoint, this is the first one that I've personally worked on. But I can tell you that the pack swap on it was super easy. It's literally just 8 bolts that hold the battery in, a handful of electrical connectors on the front, 2 coolant lines, and the thing just drops out. So it's certainly one of the easier things to do that kind of work on compared to some of the other vehicles that I do. So that's certainly a nice benefit to it. I haven't done anything else super hardcore on the Lightnings, just because most of the stuff that I tend to work on usually is a little bit older. But so far I've got a pretty good impression for the repairability on it.
Thanks, Alex. So Ben, I know you've got to head out here pretty soon, but maybe you can just share some final thoughts on what you think about the Lightning being canceled and what your impression is on the EREV side, because that's what I want to sort of end this podcast on, which is like, I was talking to Ford and they're like, it's not dead. We're launching this EREV thing. And I've been pushing for EREV trucks personally because I think they're perfect for the towing use case, but there's a lot of people that just want it electric. So Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a full electric fan. I've been driving EV since 2019 and been really excited about the EV pickup market just growing in general, especially as someone who lives just in the region that I do. I have cattle and sheep on my property. Like I need to take care of logging operations. Like I need a truck, and going EV felt like a really great step in that direction. I'm really curious about the EREV. I was talking to Jake from Ford on text for a few minutes. I'm like, oh, so this sounds like this is what Ram was thinking about doing. And he's just like, ... Yeah, pretty much. And I think it's an interesting concept. Again, I just feel like it's just one more component that could fall apart or fail. Where what if I don't use that gas generator for months and months, and then when I finally needed to kick on, there was an oil leak I didn't know that happened, or a component had failed on it, and right when I needed it, it doesn't kind of come through. And I'm a little concerned about just complexity being added to this instead of just going all in on making these batteries go in full on out and just really dialing in what a large vehicle electric battery truck could be like. I know personally, my wife, she's so glad that I have this community to talk to, because she could care less about EV. She could care less about what vehicle we own. She just wants it to work. And after owning EVs for so long, for her, it's like all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm not going to the gas station anymore. I'm not doing oil changes. Like, I'm not spending part of my life devoted to making sure the vehicle is being maintained. And funny enough, we went from a Model 3 to the Lightning. She's a truck girl now. She loves the Lightning. But she loves it because it feels like driving the Model 3 in terms of the electric drivetrain, but in this full-size pickup truck that makes her feel confident being on the roads that we have to drive, getting up to where we live. And so I think going back to like, well, we have this battery, but now we have this gas engine we got to take care of. I think it just kind of brings back that, well then why don't we get a gas truck and just be done with it, or just get an electric car and be done with it? And I just don't really know where an EREV fits in this world that's moving forward.
Well, thanks, Ben. Appreciate you joining, and great commentary, and we'll have to have you back on sometime soon. Alan, let's go to you. What do you think about the future?
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of pure electric. A lot of what Ben said, I could reiterate. The maintenance is a huge factor. This is one more thing to maintain. I work in the automotive realm in engineering, and as the Ram EREV was coming forth, I was like, guys, listen, this is the most complicated truck ever made. And they're like, what do you mean? And I walked them through. You've got an engine, you've got this huge battery. They're not super efficient either. I know some of your early testing, the math worked out to be just terrible efficiency, which Ford will likely do a better job at efficiency than Ram did. But it's still not fantastic. And I'm kind of with Ben, either use electric or gas. Kind of meeting in the middle often is the worst of both worlds, depending how you use it. There could be some use cases for this, but I'm not a huge fan of EREVs. And I was really hoping that they would push more to iterating in the electric realm, faster charging, bigger, more dense batteries, right? We know we don't want 10,000 pound trucks necessarily, but that's not the direction we're headed yet. It looks like they are headed towards maybe in the next generation, a few years from now, maybe looking at this again, especially depending how the political climate is. So I really hope in the future we can get some lighter, long range, fast charging electric trucks, but it looks like it's going to be some time, unfortunately, until we see that.
Well, appreciate the insight, Alan. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Matt, what do you think about the future?
I am, there's two sides of this. I've got my EV enthusiast, EV advocate side of me that is incredibly disappointed. Ford made me a Ford guy with the Lightning. I was never kind of a Ford loyalist or brand loyalist when it came to my vehicles until I got the Lightning, and it won me over. Like this is a fantastic vehicle, and I was so excited for T3. I was so excited for what was coming. For a lot of the same reasons that Alan said, for a lot of the same reasons Tom said, that total cost of ownership is massive for me. My electricity is so cheap that it costs me about $150 to drive 10,000 daily miles in my truck. Now, there's nothing that can come remotely close to that with the capability of this. Now, with this whole EREV concept, I get it from the business perspective, right? Again, we're not touching on the politics of all of this, but with the way that things currently are and the buyer mentality, EV trucks just haven't caught on. And a lot of the people are saying, well, if they could make it where I had the electric drivetrain with a generator behind it, I'd be for it. And EREVs kind of started getting some traction in the social media groups that people see. So do we know anything about it? No. Does it exist? I don't know if it actually exists or not. You know, we've seen reports about the Super Duties potentially having this developed. I don't know if it's for me or not. I don't know if that's the route that I'm going to go. My wife and I were just talking this morning about potentially getting a new Lightning in 2026 to just get some updated software, to get some updated hardware, to get the heat pump in my truck, because my truck is a preheat pump. So I don't know. I feel like a little bit of this is a stopgap to where they're going to do what they need to do. They're going to need to offset those costs that they're now being put on them. You know, we're talking tens of billions of dollars of hit for them from a company perspective on tariffs and everything else that's happened. They've got to shed as much cost as possible to make it through. So they have the responsibility to their shareholders. So I get that. It still sucks as an EV advocate. I'm very disappointed with the move. I'm disappointed with the way that this is kind of setting the tone for moving the future. I don't know. It doesn't change my ownership plan, so I'm keeping this truck until the wheels fall off of it. If I can, I'm giving it to my son. He wants it. So it's going to be one of those things to where it's not going to change anything necessarily for us, but it does suck. And I don't think it's going to be the only EV truck that bites the dust here in the next year or two because of the challenges that the market has seen.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you might be right there. Chris, what about the EREV side? Are you excited about that? Obviously, you said you made a standard range Lightning work for your needs, and now you've got the big battery. And is the potential benefit of having combustion for the long range and quick filling needs appealing to you, or is it just kind of another sort of stopgap situation?
No. Yeah, I would never. But I am also very much a pragmatist. So I am of two minds on this. So I think on one hand, I am severely disappointed because I think, like Matt, I've sat in the room with people that Matt has sat in, and I think I have not felt naive in a long time, and I think that is what I feel. And I can remember some episodes where I have seen you say things like, I don't cover prototypes or certain things, and I'm like, come on, Kyle, get excited. This looks cool. And then I was like, oh, I think I understand why Kyle says some of the things that he says. And I think this is one of those moments where when you talk about something that's going to happen in 2025 or 2026 at the time, or 2030, you're talking about prototypes. You're talking about things that you might project in the world. If it's not in front of you right now, it's in your imagination. And so much has changed in so many ways. And I thought I was in a room of true believers and that they were committed to something that it turns out they weren't necessarily committed to in the same way that I thought they were. And business is business in that case. And I think it is very pragmatic when you look at, China. They have a lot of EREVs, and the powertrain is going to be electric, and the experience will be electric. And it's going to be very easy if you build that EREV powertrain when the time is right to simply remove the generator. The software experience, which so much time, energy, and effort will have to go into, you have recently seen with the Gravity how important software is for the future. You've seen with the Rivian how important software will be for the future. The hardware side is almost going to be less important as long as there is an electrical component to it. as long as that drivetrain is electric, you can remove that generator later. So for the mass populace, you look at Scout, so much of the Scout reservations are EREV. You look at Dodge, they're going to go EREV. The market in the US certainly has been where it's going to be. And until electric is normalized in terms of how people, the everyday person that's just down there at the mall or at the movies, that you see every day in your schools, until it is normalized for them. And I think this is a step for that. I think it helps if the driving experience can be normalized, and that can become something that people start to realize, hey, I'm driving this EREV, and 90% of the time I'm never even using the gas part. In fact, I'm annoyed that I now have to force before the fuel expires because it's been in there for 6 months. What am I even doing on my next car purchase? Now, that starts to change and normalize what we already know. I think we live very much in a bubble. And we talk about things like FSD and all of these things. And the general world is not anywhere near where we are on this kind of stuff. And so EREV, in a practical sense, is a step in the right direction that I don't need to take. So I'm not going to take that step, but I would prefer that over continuation of 20 mile per gallon vehicles that we have today. So it's not my step, but it's a step. Fine. I'm just disappointed that that's where it is.
You brought up an interesting point, which is, you thought you were in a room full of believers. That's how Ford presented themselves to the EV community, which is like, hey, we're coming in strong at the time with the Mach-E, then the Lightning, and all of these great products that, we're building a sense of community. And at the end of the day, they're a large corporation that has to make $1. And if these EV things don't work, they're out, versus some of the startup companies that literally are only building battery electric vehicles. They have to make that technology work for their business case. And that's a really interesting move. And I would agree with what you're saying there, Chris, as well. Even from the media side, Ford saying, we're all in, we're all in, we're all in. And now, we're not all in anymore. And I'm really curious to see what happens with future development of even their small electric affordable truck that will come and how that will be affected with some of the future plans. So, Tom, do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your feeling on the EREV thing? Because I think I'm the only EREV fan here, but what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, not the biggest fan. I was kind of celebrating when the Ram Charger was like, oh, we're not making it anymore. I'm like, hooray. I personally wouldn't. Sorry, I'm still getting over a cold. I still prefer the full battery EV. If it were me, I'd maybe do a, lower production Lightning BEV, sure. Higher production EREV, or move power boosts into that category or something. But I don't know. I think EREV, I am a fan of EREV for Super Duty. I was hoping that's when they would debut it. F-250, F-350, EREV, big battery, big engine. Sure, but for the F1, I don't know. I think it will be, people will buy it. I will say, I'm pretty sure people will buy it. It'll probably be in the same, maybe even better than Power Boost from, the mileage, 700 miles, can run it only in EV mode. It'll probably be good business wise, but for the enthusiast and for the people who are, looking at Ford as an EV manufacturer, pretty sad, pretty sad, especially after just seeing, STX and stuff come out. But yeah, not the biggest fan. I'm a fan of it from the engineering standpoint, but not if it's taking away from the BEV.
Alex, I know you don't own an F-150 Lightning, although you and I have just discussed maybe getting one for the Out of Spec Renew channel, because you're moving stuff around all the time, and we're like, oh, maybe Rivian, maybe Lightning would be cool to maybe find something like that Lightning that you're sitting in that's got a lot of mileage that we restore. What's your thoughts on them canceling it there, Alex?
Yeah, I'm definitely pretty disappointed that they canceled it. As far as my thoughts on the EREV situation, it's kind of a two-sided coin. I'm a fan of EREVs if it's something you're going to use. I mean, the big issue with having the combustion engine in there is that if you don't use it, it's just going to become a problem. I mean, modern combustion engines with modern fuels that have ethanol in them, sitting just does not do them any favors. And if you're not using it, it's just going to deteriorate and become a reliability issue. So that's sort of my biggest concern from the EREV perspective, is what the longevity and the reliability of it's going to be like. And not just that, but also whether or not they actually have a large capacity long range battery in it, because that's another factor that is something that I see time and time again on a lot of the older cars that are short range with small batteries. The nature of smaller batteries with less range is that they're just going to see more cycles over a shorter period of time, and they're just not going to have as long of a lifespan. So that's another thing that feeds into the longevity and reliability perspective. So hopefully they can put a big enough battery into it that it's going to have decent longevity and it's going to last 150 or 200,000 miles before it starts to see cell failures or degradation. But the actual combustion engine portion of it is another big concern for me when it comes to EREVs. Unless it's something that you're really using all the time, it can become a problem. And we see that kind of thing like with the BMW i3 with the Rex. The Rex engines just aren't particularly reliable because most people don't actually utilize them, and they just have issues because of that.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of rounds out the podcast, which is like most F-150 Lightning owners, at least everyone we sampled here, would not choose an EREV over their battery electric truck, which is a surprise to me because from my perspective, I own a Rivian R1T, which is a lot smaller than the Lightning, but in terms of towing and usability, very similar in its towing characteristics. Actually, the Lightning goes less far than the Rivian on a charge, but it tows farther than the Rivian does while towing because it's actually a bigger vehicle, which means it's less affected by the drag of the trailer. We're talking minuscule numbers, but we've done some testing there. I actually went out and bought a diesel Super Duty for towing, multiple cars on a trailer with a, fifth wheel or gooseneck style trailer often now. And that's just something a battery electric vehicle could not do for me. The EREV conversation comes in and says, okay, hey, you can actually drive electric every day. And for the towing needs, you can go long distance. You're no longer limited to, let's say, 100 miles on a charge or maybe 120 miles on a charge. Really best case scenario when towing a big boxy trailer. If you have an EREV, you can actually go farther and fill it up. But like Alex mentioned, if you're not going to use the combustion engine often, then you really will run into reliability problems. I've owned an i3 Rex before. We've had Volts, we've had ELRs in the family, and I actually have a Polestar plug-in hybrid with like a 35 kilowatt hour battery pack. And almost all of my driving can be done on that 35 kilowatt hour battery pack, where unless I'm road tripping the car or even driving around, this isn't a range extended EV. This is just normal hybrid. My combustion engine's off a lot of the time. I just drive it electric. And so it really just goes to show, okay, maybe battery electric really is the answer. But I think it's so sad from my perspective that Ford is canceling this powertrain and canceling this generation truck, because every time I get in one, yeah, I can find a million things to complain about: charging, range, battery capacity, software integration, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a truck that just works. They always feel like home. You just get in, you hit Blue Cruise, you cruise down the road in comfort. It's got so much storage capacity, and they really are just great vehicles. They're not particularly good in any one category, but as a total system, it's a really nice package. So with that, I say let's just run around the room really quick, share one last final thought from each of you, and we'll wrap this podcast off. So Matt, why don't you kick off final remarks?
For me, I actually wanted to chime in real fast on something that Alex said in regards to the drivetrain and what you were talking about. Like you said, you bought a diesel for towing. I thought the Super Duty would be much better for an EREV platform, because when you talk about the weight of let's just say it ends up being a 100 kilowatt battery with a generator, you're talking about an 8,000 pound vehicle at that point. So I was really curious from an engineering perspective how they're going to make that work with an F-150. it's probably gonna have to be a smaller battery. I don't know. But I'm just disappointed. I love my fully electric pickup truck, and I hope that there's still some around when I need to get my next truck, and it's not all EREVs.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, also from something Alex said about, underutilization of the engine, that's going to be interesting because most of the people buying the EREV probably aren't going to use it, and they'll be better off with just the BEV, which would end up causing issues later on for repairability and service and stuff like that. People wondering why their engine won't turn on, because most of those owners will be better off just with the BEV. So it could be a future headache for Ford going forward. That's to be something interesting to watch.
Chris, what do you think about the battery electric Lightning getting killed?
Yeah, it's a sad day. I feel grateful for being part of the journey for sure. I think it's one of those things that I would rather celebrate the great that came of it than, to spend too much time being sad. There's just so much awesome that came from these years. I'm super excited for all the people that I've met along the way. They're going to support it for the next 10 years. I'm actually fortunate that I was able to get a 2025, the last production year. So I've got plenty of good years ahead of miles to go. I don't see anything on the radar that I would rather have today. And it doesn't look like there's anything coming in the future. Everything on the horizon is not looking better. So I feel like I'm in a great position. I feel like it's going to hold its value now because there's nothing to replace it. And, I'm in a good position to keep this and be happy with it until whatever it is finally catches up for battery technology, be that solid state or some, great technology leap by CATL or whatever it is, and when autonomous driving comes to the full truck spectrum and some huge technology leap comes in 2030 and the prices are down to something reasonable, then cool, my truck will have seen its day and I can pass it along to my son like Matt plans to, and I'll get the new hotness. And in the meantime, I'm, just grateful to see what's next and what all of you guys do. And we won't see another Lightning in its current form, but man, it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a lot of fun watching it the whole time. And just because there's not a new one around the corner doesn't mean there's not plenty of adventure to take with the one I have. So I hope to still see the Lightning in some videos that you do, Kyle, on some road trips or some different things, because there are 100,000 of them out there and there's still a community with them and there's still a unique story to be told. So I'm still here for it.
Thanks. And Alex, any final thoughts as you're sitting in a Lightning?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't personally owned a Lightning, but I've always kind of been a fan of them, and I'm definitely disappointed to see it go. So there's enough of them out there that I think that in the long term, they should be able to stick around out there for quite a while, and hopefully the repairability for them continues to be maintained, and hopefully their next product from Ford will be a good one to replace it.
Yep. Thanks all for joining, and everyone who had to step away as well. It's really fun to do a podcast with so many Lightning owners. We put this together kind of within 1 hour's notice. So thanks all of you for taking the time to join for this one. And it's fair to say we're all sad about the loss of a very good product. And it just feels maybe a little bit short-sighted in my opinion, but also they were quite innovative as the first electric pickup truck to mass market, I should say. And man, just a sad one. So have an extra beer for the F-150 Lightning tonight as you watch this show. And thank you all for joining. Thank you Ford, really, for making a really cool product. And now I feel like I got to get one because my goal is to have one of like everything that's canceled. So, all right, Alex, we're on the lookout on Facebook Marketplace for one of these things. And
I actually just saw one on a government auction last night.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Alex sends me the craziest Facebook marketplaces all day, every day. So we're in lightning hunt mode, but I appreciate y'all joining, and we'll see you all on another one again soon. Bye-bye.